Okay, and now for the authors. Tonight our guest authors are Peter Cease, Gary Vermeij, Ben Bradley, and Michael Moore. Unfortunately, David Herbert Donald is ill, and is very ill, and had to cancel his entire tour for the biography of Lincoln, for which he won the Pulitzer Prize. Michael Moore is going to be our master of ceremonies for this portion of the evening. Mr. Moore, as we call him, was born in Flint, Michigan, where his father and most of his relatives worked in automobile factories for General Motors. They built Chevys, Buicks, and AC spark plugs. Mike quit his first day at Buick. In 1972, shortly after the ratification of the 26th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which gave 18-year-olds the right to vote, Moore, still in high school, decided to run for school board so I could fire the principal, he said. He won, becoming one of the youngest officials ever elected to public office. The principal was reassigned. At 22, Mr. Moore founded and edited for 10 years the Flint Voice, later called the Michigan Voice, one of the nation's most respected alternative newspapers. In 1989, Moore produced and directed the landmark documentary Roger and Me, a political satire about his quest to convince General Motors chairman Roger B. Smith to visit Flint, Michigan, and witness the devastation wrought by General Motors plant shutdowns. Moore's uncle participated in the Great Sit-Down Strike of 1937, which had led to the founding of the United Auto Workers Union. The highest-grossing documentary of all time, Roger and Me, appeared on more than 100 critics' 10 best films of the year lists, including those of Vincent Canby, Janet Maslin, Karen James of the New York Times, and Gene Siskel. A number of critics from the New York Post, NPR, Seattle Times, to name a few, named Roger and Me one of the 10 best films of the decade. The film also received many awards, including Best Documentary from the National Board of Review, New York Film Critics. Am I kind of running on too long with this? Anyway, it was like, it was a great little film. The profits from Roger and Me enabled Moore to establish the Center for Alternative Media, a foundation that is dedicated to supporting independent filmmakers and social action groups. To date, the foundation has dispersed more than $400,000 in grants. Mr. Moore made an epilogue to Roger and Me titled Pets or Meat: The Return to Flint in 1992. Pets was screened at the New York, Toronto, and Telluride Film Festival. He has also appeared on the Fox special Rock the Vote and participated in the critically acclaimed documentary Blood in the Face about the rise of right-wing citizen militias based in Michigan in the 1980s. This past year, Moore premiered his first fictional feature, Canadian Bacon, a satire about the United States after the Cold War. For 2 summer seasons, 1994 on NBC and 1995 on Fox, Mr. Moore served as host, writer, director, and executive producer of the Emmy Award-winning and critically acclaimed program TV Nation. The New York Daily News, this was also a great little TV program, apparently, called TV Nation. Called TV Nation the best show in the past 30 years of television. In 1995, Moore won the Most Promising Television Producer Award from the Producers Guild. Okay, all right. Okay. Cut to the chase. Okay, and we have him here this evening because he's written a book. Book is Downsize This. Downsize This is kind of which is random threads from an unarmed American published by Crown. It has been described as a scathing rebuttal to the nutification of America and hilarious proof of why Michael Moore is the unofficial champion of the largest political force in the nation, the 60% of voters who don't vote. Please welcome Mr. Michael Moore.
Thank you. They always told you in school it was important to have a resume. I did not write that. Those people at Random House, I'll tell you. And I don't even have a college education. I mean, that's the disgusting part of that whole thing. Anyways, thank you very much for that introduction. And I'm very happy to be here in Colorado. It's always been a very good state for me. This is where Roger Me got its first start at the Telluride Film Festival. And it was the state where I came on TV Nation in my attempt to be the first man in America to hug all 50 governors. And we went to Aspen for the National Democratic Governors Convention. And, well, you know, the Republicans said they wanted to return power to the states, and, well, I wanted to touch that power like no man had touched it before. So while I was in Colorado, I was able to hug 7 or 8 governors, and I went on my quest after that to try and reach the others. It's great to be here at in the Denver Tech Center. The Denver Tech Center, that's the new, used to be called the SNL Stonehenge. All these wonderful buildings out here on this end of Denver. A little rummage sale took place a few years ago. You might remember that. Well, look what we ended up with. More chicken dinners. We're still eating chicken dinners, huh? It's pretty good. I was in Detroit on the tour this week, and a local radio station said, how about if we take you over to the GM building and we'll broadcast live as a surprise from the lobby. I said, well, that sounds like a lot of fun. The last time I went there was in TV Nation. I took Dr. Kevorkian with me into the lobby. And if you just could have seen the faces on the guards when they saw the two of us walking through the door together. Seriously, I mean, if you're that security guard, which one do you take out first? So I said, okay, we'll do it. So this past Wednesday, we're in there in the lobby, we're broadcasting live on the radio, and who should walk through the door with a group of investment bankers but Neil Bush? Denver's own Neil Bush. And again, if you had seen the look on his face, I guarantee you I am the last person he expected to see in the lobby of the General Motors headquarters. And I said, what are you doing here? He goes, what are you doing here? He says, I'm here to see the chairman. I said, well, so am I. I'm still trying to see him. Can you help me out, Neil? So he's trying to get away from me, and I said, look, just one last question, Neil. I'm going to Denver this Saturday. Where's the money? Where'd you bury it, Neil? He said it's under the 7th tent pole out at the new airport. I was out there like half the afternoon looking for it. But anyways. And of course, I'm not wearing my Detroit Tigers hat tonight because, well, you know, there's been this resurgence in the Brooklyn Dodgers. Lately, it's the favorite team of one of our presidential candidates. Honestly, the great thing about him complimenting Nomo's no-hitter for the Los Angeles Dodgers last week was the fact that Nomo is exactly the kind of guy he'd like to ship out of the country. Get the immigrants out. He pitched a no-hitter for the Brooklyn Dodgers, so I guess that was okay. Anyways, I'm sorry about the jacket and all this. I was a speaker last week at the Great Lakes Booksellers Association dinner. It is not the class affair this thing is, let me tell you. All right? It was in downtown Toledo, right on the Toledo River, and they had it in a tent in a pouring, driving rainstorm. And so we were all out there, and it's just, you know, it's the Rust Belt Booksellers Association. It's the actual name of it. And I thought, well, tonight, you know, I better wear a jacket so I can stay warm. And then I end up in a beautiful place like this. Thank you, Silverado. So, anyways, I think this is a good time to introduce our first speaker tonight, and then I will be back up here at the end of this to say a few more words. Peter Seese is an international acclaimed illustrator, a filmmaker, and an author. He's made 2 animated television films for children and 8 animated shorts, including You Got to Serve Somebody from the Bob Dylan song, and Heads, which received the Golden Bear Award at the Berlin Film Festival. In 1984, Peter Sees entered the world of children's books. His books include Rainbow Rhino, which was chosen by the New York Times Book Review as one of the 10 best illustrated books of 1987. Beach Ball, which was also on the best illustrated book list. Follow the Dream, The 3 Golden Keys, and his most recent book, Starry Messenger, a book depicting the life of Galileo. Please welcome Peter Sees.
Thank you very much. I was hoping to be a little funny, but it's going to be extremely hard after this. You see, I'm an illustrator, so I sit at home most of the time. I don't face people, and I don't speak English because I came to the United States like normal, well, before him in 1982. And for years I used to say like I'm a 9-year-old child in the old man's body. But now I found out that my 4-year-old daughter speaks better English than I do, and it's no excuse anymore. So I thought the only way how I can present myself here with all these excellent people who have Pulitzer Prizes and awards and stuff like that is to show you slides with my pictures, because the fact that I don't speak shows, I think, itself in my pictures, because I have to draw that much more. So I would start with the slides, and I'm supposed to say lights, which is hard because you have lights on. Got a little off. And I will tell you the story how I came to do book Starry Messenger depicting the life of Galileo Galilei. It's going... The middle was truly genius. Maybe that's the alarm coming off.
Everyone stay seated. The young bush has arrived.
Those who believe in an afterlife may stay, and the rest of us, please exit the doors immediately. Thank you. What's the deal here? Do you know? Oh, you're from C-SPAN. See, the guys from C-SPAN were up back there lighting up, and all this smoke, and now we've got a big problem. All right. Did anybody notice this afternoon, when I was checking in, there were the fire trucks out there? Did anybody see those? 2 guys with axes were following me in here. No, it's true. What's the deal? You know, this is what it was like on the Titanic. All right. Meanwhile, please welcome once again another immigrant, Peter Sees.
I was trying to run away from politics all my life, and here we go again. Somebody must have something against you, I think. Well, this is my new book, Starry Messenger. I will do it like that apple tart we had, sweet and short, everything. So, I grew up in the city of Prague. This is Prague many years ago, and I realized when I finished the book Starry Messenger that indeed I was growing up under the big star, which was Red Star, and everything was so awful under the Red Star that I didn't go out very much. And I painted things in our house. I painted everything in the house, like light switchers. And I painted chairs for my favorite people, so I did chairs for people who I would hope would come and visit and sit on these chairs. So it was a chair for the famous tennis player. It's red because we play on the, of was the red clay. There was a chair for the famous circus artist, and there was a chair for the soccer player I liked. After that, somehow somebody got hold of...
May I have your attention,
Are you
please?
talking to me? Somebody's talking to me.
May I have your attention, please?
This is
We have
English.
just experienced an activation of our emergency alarm system. We are in the process of investigating the cause at this time. Please remain in your present location.
I'm used to speak with children book authors in the dark. And try to do it even shorter. I'm getting scared here. I made a film about people looking for the stars, which made me come to Los Angeles, where I realized I'm leaving the red star and coming to the country of 50 white stars. In Los Angeles, of course, I couldn't get a job. I was walking on these sidewalks with many stars and names of people on it. So in order to make a living, I was painting eggs for some egg collector in Switzerland, making skies with little stars, as you can see. And little turbans on the eggs, which little stars again. In desperation, I written to Morris, and that was a star of children's books, and he said, "What are you doing in California? That's the wrong place. You have to go to New York." So I went to New York. I started to do pictures of the stars for magazines like Time magazine. It was Nancy Reagan with Aquarius, which I had to do overnight. I had to do pictures for different articles, and I got involved with the stars of the children's books, like Sid Fleischman, who I did Whipping Boy and many other books with. And just going through these slides now, thinking about stars, I realized how many books I did with stars in it. And I was grateful for doing these books with other people, and then I started to do books about my own life, which were basically about creatures looking for their own star, like Rainbow Rhino, Columbus, who wasn't a creature but was looking for the new world, following the stars and having stars on his sail. These were the stars at night when they turn into different kinds of monsters. This was the very important part of the book when he thinks it's a star, and in fact it's a new world. In the ocean world, I had a whale which was looking for another whale under the stars. And in Komodo, I had a dragon who was again living under the stars. Then I had stars, real stars of my own. It's my English because it should be apple of your eye, so stars of my eye. It was my daughter Madeleine, my little boy Matej. And for Madeleine, I created this book about Prague, about my childhood, which actually I was commissioned to do by Mrs. Onassis, who in the way was also a star, even she was pretending she's just an editor from Doubleday when we did the book. But she thought I'm a foreigner who doesn't know who she is, and I had to play the game along, so. I did book 3 Golden Keys, and they wrote a story about my life, and they said he did paint eggs for egg collectors when he had no money. So I got this phone call when they said, "We are the Egg Board of the United States." I thought it's some friend making a joke. They said, "No, we are the Egg Board. Would you paint an egg for the President of the United States?" This is a free country. This is another picture with these stars from the Prague book. We don't want to tell you what to paint, but if we could suggest if you could do some stars or some patriotic scenes. So I painted an egg and also a hat for President of the United States. One egg had little stars again, and with Madeleine we presented the egg to the President. It was like as far as I could go, so it was like I was with the star of the politics. I thought, now I'm the star. And the President said, "Thank you for opening the horizons for the young generation." And in that moment I realized I'm really not opening anything, I was just opening my own life and things for myself, because all these books I did were really just to satisfy my ego. And having my own children, all of a sudden I realized that in New York it's very hard to get them into school, and that in this country, which is the richest country in the world, and you might not know it because you live here, but I came from somewhere else, so I can tell you that in New York there are over 50% of children coming out of the public school which cannot read and write. So I was looking for some hero who would be like telling people about the power of the spirit, and I came up with Galileo Galilei because I thought, like in his times, children are born and they have some destiny ahead of them, which is this picture of the book. They play in the playgrounds like they played in the 16th century, only now they find different horrors in the playgrounds of New York than they found in Florence then. They go to school like he did, and it's up to them if they will learn something. And they hear about amazing inventions like he did hear about telescope, which he used to the advantage of mankind. They can also not be always understood like Galileo wasn't. Here's in the court of the Inquisition. But in the end, I think that in my books, because some people say, why don't you do just pink rabbits or little blue weasels, and they might even make puppets out of it, and it might be serious on television, and this is maybe not for children, and who's going to read it? But just 2 days ago, I was watching the eclipse of the moon on the roof in New York, and they said on the radio that if you want to show children stars in the city like New York, you have to take them at least 60 miles or 70 miles out because you can't see the stars from the city. And I realized that my own kids are watching the stars on the television or computer, and maybe if I can bring just one star to some child in the United States through my books, I would be very happy. Okay, thank you very much.
That was very nice, thank you. And it came complete with a Pink Floyd laser light show that's still going on. So I guess those are kind of like stars too. Gary Vermeij is a preeminent evolutionary biologist and paleontologist. He's a professor at the University of California at Davis. He's been awarded the MacArthur and Guggenheim Fellowships. Is that the Genius Grant? Is that what that is? Wow. I want one of those. And he's a fellow at the American Association of... Oh, man.
We have just experienced an activation of our emergency room. Careful inspection has determined the cause and reset the system to normal. Anyone who has left their room may now return.
Don't you wish America could be like that? Everything has been reset. And now we can go back to normal. On November 5th, just somebody come on TV and just tell us that. Gary is a fellow at the American Association for the Advancement of Science. He was the editor of Evolution and the author of A Natural History of Shells, Evolution, and Escalation, an Ecological History of Life. And his most recent book, what is your most recent book? Oh, I have it right here. The most recent book is called Privileged Hands, A Scientific Life. Please welcome Dr. Gary Vermeij.
This is a hard act to follow, let me tell you. Many people may wonder why an active scientist would have the arrogance, the pretense to write an autobiography, which he's telling you about on his 50th birthday. And I basically have only two excuses to offer. One is that I think I have a unique experience as a blind person doing biology and paleontology. And the other, quite frankly, is it's an excuse to impart some knowledge about science, and particularly about evolution. In other words, I want to bring science to an audience that might otherwise ignore it as best they can. But let's start briefly with the business of being blind. Many people, of course, have the perception that blindness is a disaster, that it's a horrible tragedy, which, of course, if you become blind at an older age, it is to some extent. But what I'm here to tell you, and what is in the book, is that blindness is a nuisance, something that can be overcome with plenty of opportunity, and plenty of proper skills, and with the kind of family that I had, and with some of the teachers that I had. I'm here to tell you that I can enjoy life and have as strong an aesthetic sense as anyone that I know. And that sense began to be really developed, I would say, when in 4th grade I had a teacher just after I came over from the Netherlands. A 4th grade teacher had been to Florida and, on a whim I suppose, brought back some shells which she put on the windowsills of her classroom. And there they were, and being in the front of the class, I decided to have a look, which is hard to do not in public, but I was having a look. And I was so utterly overwhelmed with the diversity of forms, the beauty of the gloss and the insides of these shells, the finery of the sculpture, that from that moment I decided not only would I love to study these things and do whatever it took to do more, but I, in fact, sort of framed the first scientific question of my life, because I had, of course, been in Holland for 9 years previously, and had, with great pleasure, gone to the beach, and there found all sorts of very nice shells, which, however, compared to these things from Florida, were chalky and, well, frankly, rather plain. Enjoyable, but rather plain. And so there was this question that arose in my mind, which I'm sure I didn't phrase the way I will phrase to you now. Why are these warm water shells from Florida and elsewhere so beautiful, so aesthetically enormously pleasing, as compared to the cold water shells that I was used to from the Netherlands? And so with that, I decided I really wanted to read all sorts of things, and my parents took out books from the library. My brother, Arie, who lives in the Netherlands now, decided to read all sorts of things. We studied marine organisms together in our spare time. And of course, there was nothing in Braille. Now, you must understand, here I am celebrating books. I love books as well as anyone. But there is very little, there is virtually nothing in Braille that has anything to do with science. There are a few minor exceptions, but believe me, not very many. So they read me enormous quantities of books. That tradition has continued right on to the present time, and I have now a library of well over 12,000 Braille manuscripts having to do with science of all sorts and other subjects besides. So I decided that I wanted to study shells. It was going to be conchology first, and then malacology, then biology, then science, generally broadening myself, and so that's exactly what I have done. I want to say that shells are, of course, as you can imagine, perfectly made for me. They have numerous advantages. I can examine them easily, but there are some more intellectual reasons to choose them as well. They chronicle, for example, the lives of their makers, because, you see, they grow at one end, and as they add material, they record on a daily basis the everyday environments, as well as the remarkable events such as attacks by predators that occur to them during their lifetime, if they survive it. So for me, the study of shells became a means to a larger end. I became interested in the study of how predators and other enemies affect shell architecture, and how that varies from place to place. For example, why are Pacific shells more armored than Atlantic ones? I then began to look at shells from ancient geological deposits as compared to modern ones, so change with time, and that got me into a hypothesis of escalation, and that got me to my present work, which ranges all over the map from the ins and outs, the arcana, the esoterica of classification of snails and clams, to a macroeconomic view of the history of life, which has to do with precisely analogous principles to what economists talk about when they mention economic growth. But I want to return briefly, and ever so briefly, to this blindness bit, because it is, after all, one of the rationales for having written the book. I emphasize throughout what I consider to be the truly important point, that blindness is only one, and perhaps not the most important one, of my characteristics. I am Dutch, I am stubborn, which some people might consider a synonym, and I'm a lot of other things besides that. You know, I'm a father, I do all sorts of things, and I'm a biologist or a paleontologist or whatever you like. I feel that blindness is one of those things that must be overcome, and the way to do so is to have lots and lots of opportunity. Blind people must learn Braille. They must have locomotor skills that make them easily moving around with, in my case, a cane. They must have educational opportunity, but they must also adhere to the same standards as are prevailing in the population as a whole, neither greater nor lesser. And so my whole life I have felt very strongly that I want to be a scientist who is blind, or the way I would put it is that I am not a blind man who happens to be a biologist. I am a biologist who happens to be a blind man. Thank you.
Get back here.
There'll be no more interruptions tonight. Playing the role of Jason Robards tonight will be Benjamin C. Bradley. Ben Bradley needs no introduction. He was the editor of the Washington Post from 1968 to 1991. And thanks to his efforts in standing up to the Nixon administration, both with the Pentagon Papers and with Watergate, we all of us as Americans, owe him a debt of gratitude. Please welcome Ben Bradley.
This has been a perfectly extraordinary evening when you think of it. I thought I was going to have to get up here and introduce myself while he was while Michael was in the men's room and or decking the firemen who showed up. I'm glad you mentioned Jason Robards. In making a speech after writing a book that sells a few copies, you get so bored with telling the same story over and over again. And I don't like to bring up Jason Robards because it looks as if I was hustling the movie or hustling something. In my family, children were encouraged to talk, especially at the Sunday lunch, but they were also told never to repeat themselves. And I can remember my brother shouting, "Boring, boring!" and my mother saying, "You've already said that this week, dear." God rest her soul, what she would have done with my conversations in the last year. I have, I'm very worried about talking because I talked earlier today, and at least 4 people who were there are now here, and all I can say to you is tough luck. Generally, I tell the same stories over and over again, and I've been on television quite a lot, and I've developed this habit. It's really quite scary. I'm not doing it now, so don't worry.
Stand
which is that as I talk and start to tell a story, I talk to myself. And I say, are you going to tell that same story again? And I'll tell you, someone else who does that is Doris Kearns Goodwin. I've been on some shows with her, and when I first did it, I did it about 15 years ago with her. And as she started telling a story for the second time, and she saw that I noticed it, she just went. So to those of you who have heard me before, what are you going to do? Jason Robards. Let's start about that movie, because it doesn't. I had a really good education, and I was prepared to, go to war and do all these things. I was not at all prepared to see a movie in which somebody with my name goes swaggers, I think is the word, around the city room, using the F word several times, and which, of course, I had to work out what he meant. And but when I first saw that movie, it was with Redford and Pakula, the director, Alan Pakula, and Mrs. Graham, Bernstein, Woodward, and a couple of the rest of us. We went into a theater owned by the Motion Picture Association, and we all sat alone. There wasn't a seat, there wasn't anybody within 10 seats of us this way. And because we wanted, we didn't want to be caught laughing nervously or doing anything ungentlemanly. So, like sobbing. So at the end of it, there was a dead silence, and nobody was going to say anything. And finally, Redford said, "For God's sakes, somebody talk. What did you think of it?" Well, the answer is that, it wasn't bad. It condensed 2.5 really interesting years into something like 2 hours. And except for the fact that whenever a reporter put a phone call in, somebody always answered, I thought it was very accurate. Actually, that's about the first time I've told that story. Maybe you'd like to know what the 3 most often asked questions are. Who is Deep Throat? And I'm not going to tell you. The second is, what do you mean you didn't know about John Kennedy fooling around? And the third is, what was it like to have a movie made of you? So I've already answered. I'm not going to answer the first one. I've already answered the second one. And you're probably bored with the Kennedy one. The rules changed about covering newspaper people, covering private lives of people. And I don't exactly know why they changed. I think it is because, to be serious for a moment, that along in the 60s, because of Vietnam and because of the counterculture that it started, people began to get sick of being lied to. And whereas things that had been winked at for a long time, especially in journalism, people just decided that's enough of that. So the presidents who have come and probably sinned no more, no less than Kennedy, are paying a much more fearful price for it. I don't know if that's good or not. I know that the holding public officials to account is a good thing. And I think that when nobody's been looking, our public officials have slipped into lies so easily. First they brush them off as exaggerations, then they're just saying, I'm trying to tell you how I feel about certain things. We don't know how to handle lies as journalists. If the President of the United States looks you in the television eye, the whole nation, and says that he is unable to tell you about the truth about Watergate because it involves matters of national security, newspapers have to write that. It is immediately a lie. The fact that he said it is not a lie, but what he said is a lie, was a lie, is a lie. I'm going to. My next. I'm supposed to talk about the book that I did write. The next book I'm going to write is going to be how to read a newspaper, and I hope that I am going to be able to show you when to look for lies, all the body language that accompanies lies, and that's for the next book. Barbara Hauer once told me that the answer to any question about your book, any question at all that you get asked during a book tour, is like I said on page 124 of my book, and then you can say anything you want. I have had a wonderful seat, a good life. The trouble with my book it's very good, I think, but the trouble with it was that I had a lot of trouble with memory. And I'm just going to tell you one story, and again, to those who heard it already. When it came time for me to write about the Saturday Night Massacre, which, as you remember, was the night that the Nixon administration wasted about 4 top officials in the Justice Department, I decided that I would write that chronologically in my book and tell how it happened. Well, the way it happened was that I was with a bunch of other journalists at a tennis tournament, Saturday night, being the Saturday Night Massacre, at the covered tennis courts of the Arlington Y. And about 6:30, 7 o'clock that afternoon, the tournament kept getting interrupted by a loudspeaker, which would say, David Brinkley, please call your office. And Brinkley would come back and say, Jesus, they just got Richardson. And then they'd say, Roland Evans, please come back. And Rolly would say, my God, I think Archie Cox is gone too. And then they'd say, Bradley, call your office. And anyway, this is how I remembered it, and I wrote it, I thought, especially well, full of in-close detail that us ex-magazine writers like. And I brought it home to my wife. And she sat there, which I don't generally do, but she sat there and read it. It was about 14 pages. And she said, you and I had dinner the night of the Saturday Night Massacre with Barbara Hauer and Willie Morris at a restaurant called Chez Camille's on DeSales Street in downtown Washington. And I said, oh my God. And I called up Buchwald, and I said, where were you on the night of the Saturday Night Massacre? And he said, I don't know. And with a little extra sleuthing, I find out that I didn't make it up, because, but what I wrote happened a year later at the celebration of the first anniversary of the... So I think I got all the mistakes out, and thank you very much.
Downsize This is my first book. This is it. The cover, the jacket's off it, because I can't stand to look at myself. Going on a book tour, you're constantly having to take something and look at you, and then you realize, well, I realized the first day on that, on the cover right about here, Random House, the photographer, or whoever the art department is there, had given me a manicure. And if you look at the front of the book, they've cleaned all my fingers, you know? They couldn't take 20 pounds off the face, but they could clean my fingers. So I took the jacket off, and I haven't looked at it since. One of the things I did in the book was to, I wanted to ask this question, which I figured we all already knew the answer to it, but thought I'd ask it anyways. Will a politician accept money from anyone? I mean, you know, we got a situation here where how so much corporate money controls these campaigns. You got R.J. Reynolds contributed $1 million to the Republicans in the last few years, and $500,000 to the anti-tobacco Democrats. And, you know, you wonder just, will they just take money from anybody? So I decided to form a number of nonprofit organizations. And I got a bank to give me checking accounts for each of these organizations with the name of the organization written on the check. And then I deposited money in each of the accounts and sent political contributions to each of the candidates this year. So Bob Dole got $100 from the Satan Worshippers for Dole. Bill Clinton got $100 from the Hemp Growers of America. Ross Perot got $100 from the Pedophiles for Free Trade. And Pat Buchanan got $100 from Abortionists for Buchanan. And who do you think was the first to cash the check? Pat Buchanan, Mr. Right to Life. He cashed the check. I was so stunned by this, because I thought he'd be last, actually, that I quickly formed another organization and sent him a check, this time just for $75, because I was feeling very guilty, because he had $100 of my money now. I sent him $75 from the John Wayne Gacy fan club. And he endorsed that check too, and cashed it. Actually, I carry these with me now, and we'll be passing them around later so you can see their endorsements on the back, John Wayne Gacy. And then just a few weeks ago, after the book was published, the Clinton people finally cashed their check from the Hemp Growers of America. This thing had been rolled up, wadded up, and forgotten for about 5 months, which one has a tendency to do when you're accepting donations from hemp growers. I got on the plane this morning at LaGuardia, and I sat down, and of course I always get stuck next to some businessman. And after they've had a couple martinis, you know, they look over at you. Ah, yeah, you're the guy. You made that movie. What's its name? Roger Moore. What's your name? Yeah. Roger and me. Oh, yeah, that's it. What do you got against profit? As they always say, right? What do you got against profit? The poor guy today, though, I sit down, and he just looked frightened. And I don't know if it's just because the book is out or I've been in the paper with his stuff or whatever, but he immediately started babbling on about how, you know, I'm a vice president at MCI, and I just wanted to tell you that when Hurricane Fran happened in North Carolina a few weeks ago, I sent a memo out telling everyone, take the day off, do whatever you can, we'll pay you for that day off. And I just think that there has to be a morality in business. And hey, sir, it's okay, man. It's okay. I know you're a good guy. It's okay. But usually they want to get into an argument or pick a fight. You know, what do you got against profit? What about the free market system? Shareholders. We got a responsibility to our shareholders. You know. And I always say to them, you know, I got to tell you, that's really not our system. You see, I've read the United States Constitution, and I've never once seen the word shareholder in it. It does say of, by, and for the people. That's what our system is. And if it was just about profit, you know, well, why doesn't General Motors sell crack? I mean, think about it. I mean, they could make a huge profit selling crack. A 2,000-pound car makes General Motors about $800 profit. 2,000 pounds of crack, I'm telling you, that's a lot of profit. So why don't they sell crack? Why don't they do this? Well, they don't do it because it's illegal. Why is it illegal? Well, it's illegal because we as a society have determined that crack destroys our communities. Now, what do you call it when General Motors, which made $7 billion in profits last year, $7 billion in a record profit year, closes a number of factories this year, and in my own hometown of Flint, Michigan, throws another 3,000 people out of work? Now, why would you do that when you're making a record profit? Well, so you can make more profit, Mike. So you can make $7.1 billion this year. Well, you know, I happen to think that that's wrong. I think it's immoral. I don't think that we should allow it. Well, you can't say that. That's not our system. Business has to do whatever it can do to make money for its shareholders. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. We pass laws all the time prohibiting them from doing various things that could make them a profit. Clinton just signed a bill last month prohibiting U.S. corporations from going to Libya. It's a law now. It's a law. You can't do that. Why can't you do it? Well, because Libya is a terrorist nation. It's killed Americans. In the front of the book, there are two photographs side by side. One is the bombed-out Oklahoma City building, and below it is the bombed-out General Motors building that they were tearing down this year in Flint. And as I drove by it, it was eerie how similar that building was in Flint, Michigan to the one, how much it actually looked like the one in Oklahoma City. And I started thinking, what is terrorism? I mean, obviously, if you park a Ryder truck in front of a building and blow it up and kill 168 people, that's a definite act of terrorism and should be severely punished. But what do you call it when a company politely removes the people from the building first, before they blow it up? But in the ensuing years, the people that used to work there, because their livelihood has been ripped from them, their families come apart. A number of them will commit suicide. A number of them will kill their spouses because of some argument they get into over a lack of a job or losing money at the racetrack or whatever. Others will die a longer or slower death through turning to drugs or alcohol to ease the pain of the fact that because their lives have been turned upside down. What do we call that? Is that a form of murder, economic murder? Is that a form of terrorism, economic terrorism? I happen to think so, and I think it's wrong. And I think it should be prevented. And the great thing about America, and the great thing about our Constitution is, it says that we have a right to protect ourselves from harm. We have a right to protect ourselves from harm. You know, I honestly believe when anthropologists dig us up 400 or 500 years from now, they will not understand why we just rolled over and let these corporations do this to us. Why we allowed AT&T, the chairman of AT&T announces one day that he's laying off 40,000 people, and the next day his stock goes up. He's rewarded. He and his executives and his shareholders are rewarded with millions of dollars simply because of announcing that they're going to destroy the lives of 40,000 people. And we reward that now. And you've seen this happen in recent years over and over and over again. And you begin to maybe try to understand the level of anger and despair that exists in this country right now. In my state of Michigan, there are now 50 groups that call themselves the Michigan Militia. 50 different groups running around in the woods carrying guns, calling themselves the Michigan Militia. Last year on TV Nation, I went up north in Michigan to meet the founder of the first Michigan Militia, Norm Olson. And I asked him, if he would put down his guns for a day, just one day with his guys, put them down and do what I want to do and join Mike's Militia. And so they agreed to do this, but they wouldn't take off their camouflage. They like that camouflage. So, can I borrow your water here, Gary? Thank you. Us authors all drink from the same well. You wonder what makes us right. You now have the secret. I went up there, and so they agreed to do this. So for the day, I got the guys in the Michigan Militia to bake a cake with me. We read poetry to each other. I took them to the carnival. We rode the Ferris wheel. 12 guys in camouflage and me riding the Ferris wheel, spinning around. And while we're doing this, I got them to sing Kumbaya with me. Then we went on the Tilt-A-Whirl and we sang If I Had a Hammer. And it was a great day. And at the end of the day, I said to Norm, now Norm, isn't this a lot more fun than running around the woods carrying guns? And he said, no. So, I don't know about you, but I'm a little frightened by the situation here. I don't think things are too good right now. We're going to have the largest non-turnout ever in the history of this country, in the election. I honestly believe this. In 1994, 62% of the people did not vote in the congressional elections. 62%. That's 118 million Americans did not vote. That is the equivalent of the total voting age population of 42 states. Did not vote in 1994. And now they're predicting that possibly for the first time, over 50% will not vote in a presidential election. And I got to tell you, the reason they're not voting, it's not because they're apathetic or stupid or out of touch. It's because they are in touch. It's because they've had it. It's because they're tired of the choices over and over and over again. Tweedledum and Tweedledummer. And now Tweedle really dumb. I call this the evil of two lessers. The American people are really, really tired of this. It's amazing that they won't let Perot vote. I mean, not vote, I'm sorry, participate. Well, that I wouldn't mind. But they won't let him debate. I mean, the man got 20% of the vote. You know, the idea in a democracy is to bring as many people into the tent as possible. Have as much discussion and debate as possible, right? That's what's great about a democracy. To not let this man in. I mean, I thought it was incredible 4 years ago that, and this to me just really showed the level of anger in this country, that 20% of the American public would actually leave the house, get in their car, drive to the polls, stand in line for an hour, and vote for someone they knew was a certified fruitcake just to send a message. That was very powerful. Almost an act of civil disobedience. Right? And now, you know, he can't be in the debates. He got 20% of the vote. That's the new criteria now. Oh, that's not enough. That's not enough. 20% is not enough to be in the debates. You know, do you realize that according to some polls, Bob Dole is only 8 points away from being eliminated from the debates himself? I mean, if he sinks any lower, what's going to happen here? Clinton is going to debate himself? Which actually he could do because he flip-flops so much on the issues. I feel like that scene in Bananas where Woody Allen is interrogating himself on the witness stand. He jumps in the box and runs out, asks a question, jump in the witness box. Now, I guess we'd tune into that debate. It would make for a very interesting debate, although I have proposed in Downsize This that we get rid of the debates this year and just put Dole and Clinton in a monster truck race. You know, those trucks with the big wheels. Dole is in King Kong and Clinton is in Bigfoot, and they just have at it in the Pontiac Silverdome. See, people would tune into that. Or put them both on American Gladiators, right? They have to climb the Velcro wall. First one to the top wins the Oval Office. I know you're thinking Dole has an unfair advantage because he'd be spiking his way up with a pen, but, you know, have some respect for the man, please. Brooklyn Dodgers. Let's hear it for the Brooklyn Dodgers. Or, how about this? This is probably for a book audience, this is better. And I think actually a very good idea. We set each of the presidential candidates down in a school desk, and they have to retake their SAT tests. High score wins. Just a few ideas. When I voted in '92, I have to admit, I kind of voted for Clinton. There's something about the guy. I just didn't trust him. I didn't know what it was, but I just had a feeling that he really wasn't best for working people in this country. And so, anyways, my daughter, who was 11 at the time, wanted to see what the inside of a voting booth looked like, so she went with me to the polls, and we get in there, and I said, you know, I don't know what to do. And she said, well, why don't we vote for Hillary? I said, well, that's a good idea. We'll just pretend we're voting for Hillary. I said, but Natalie, you pull the lever because I don't want any blood on my hands here, you know. So she voted, and I found out later that it's illegal to allow 11-year-olds to vote in this country. But, you know, it got me thinking. I've been thinking about this for the last 4 years, about how we treat Hillary Clinton. What is the point of attacking this woman? What is the problem with men who have a problem or are threatened by women who are strong and independent and have their own point of view? I think this is really at the core of this. And I really do. I think, you know... Please notice that Gary is the only man applauding this. See, guys, whenever I say this, guys out there, oh, what's he talking about? Hillary, geez, Hillary, oh, wow, Hillary. You know, it's like, what's your problem, guys? You know? Really, you got to see it this way. You really just show how weak you are when you're threatened by women like this. You know, the macho thing to do would be to be attracted to women like this. You know, that would be like that'd show that you're strong, right? I'm trying to talk to the guys here now into, like, you know, changing their attitudes toward women. So just bear with me for a second. It's only taken a few thousand years. This is just my contribution to the effort. So I have a chapter in my book. Downsize This. The Random House people over here going, C-SPAN's here, say the name of the book as often as you can. I have a chapter in the book called My Forbidden Love for Hillary. And I have to say, I not only think that she's a great American, I think she's damn easy on the eyes. That's right. That's right, guys. I know you don't like that one either, do you? I don't know. What is it? What is it? You got to get over it, man. You just got to get over it. I don't know what the problem is there. Also, I'm on a campaign this year to get Jesse Helms put in prison. Thank you. Thank you. Now, there's a very simple way that we can do this, and I'm asking all of you to participate in this effort. 2 years ago, he made a threat against the life of the President of the United States. Do you remember this? You remember this? He said that if Clinton came to North Carolina, quote, he better bring a bodyguard. We got a lot of military installations down here, and the military guys, they don't like their commander-in-chief. Right? You know that it is a felony in this country to make a real or an implied threat against the life of the President of the United States? So, as part of the book, I decided to call the Secret Service and find out why they didn't arrest him for doing this. And there is an amazing discussion, which I transcribed, is in the book, with the guy from the Secret Service that we're talking to, and saying, how come you didn't arrest this guy? And the man from the Secret Service said, well, we actually recommended to the U.S. District Attorney in Washington, D.C., that Helms be prosecuted. And they rejected our recommendation. Now, this is the first time I had heard this. I said, well, Jesus, this is really incredible news. What are you doing now? I mean, what if he does it again? Well, we're actually keeping a file now on things that he says on the floor of the Senate, and our guy in North Carolina is keeping a file on what he says in North Carolina. Wow! So they mean like if he does it again, if he does it again, we are going to go after him this time. And I said, well, is there any way we can help? And just being a good citizen, you know, sort of a Crime Stopper sort of thing. And he said, well, if you hear Helms make any kind of threat against the president, you can call our local Secret Service agent in your city. So in the book, I have published the private phone numbers and names of each of the Secret Service guys in every city in this country, asking the readers to please call if they hear him say anything. Because I'd like to see Jesse Helms fighting Hinckley for the top bunk next year. Thank you. Listen. I got to do a number of things in the book that I wasn't able to do on TV Nation. This sort of being Banned Book Week, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about banned TV. And there are a number of things, of course, they won't let us do on television. And one of them was, and I did it in the book, was I wanted to do a story called I Try to Commit Bob Dornan. And you know who Bob Dornan is, right? The congressman from Southern California. I don't have to probably explain this to most of you. The guy's a little nuts, right? And I really thought he really needs some help. And so I called a number of psychiatric hospitals in the Washington, D.C. area and played for them the tapes of him talking on the House floor, screaming about fags and this and that and whatever, without telling them that he was a United States congressman, and asking them what I should do. And each time I played the tape, the psychiatric nurse on the other end of the line would say, "Are you in any danger?" And I would say, no ma'am, just the country, just the country. Oh man. It's a lot of crazy stuff. On TV Nation, there were 5 stories they wouldn't let us air. And tomorrow at Tattered Cover and in the other cities I'm going to on this tour, I'm showing the censored TV Nation. The stories, it wasn't because of violence or nudity or bad language, it was just bad ideas. We did a story on what happened to the savings and loan presidents. Where are they today? Not in jail, all right? We did a story on the school district in Topeka, Kansas, that was handing out community service to the kids if they did work after school. Well, one of the kids, for his community service, went to the funerals of people who had died of AIDS and picketed those funerals, holding up signs that read, "God hates fags." And Topeka West High School gave him extra credit for doing this. So we went there to find out why. We couldn't show that on TV. We did another story on people who want to kill abortion doctors as their hobby, and that we couldn't air that because we couldn't sell Mentos after it. And then we did a story on condoms. And they said, well, you can't do a story on condoms in the family hour. I said, well, that's exactly when we should be doing a story on condoms, in the family hour. So we went out and I sent one of our correspondents out because, you know, I don't know if you've noticed this, until recently, if you went to the pharmacy, I mean, for years, you know, for whenever I can remember, it was always one size, right? Regular. One size fits all, right? Am I right? Okay, nobody in here uses condoms, all right. Yeah, the bookstore owners don't need condoms, no. We're procreating so we can have more book readers in this country, yes. I think some of you know what I'm talking about. Anyways, a couple of years ago, suddenly a new size appeared in drugstores next to the old regular size condoms. Extra large. All right? Can anybody back me up on this, right? They're called Magnum and Max. These are the names of these condoms. And I'm thinking, you know, leave it to a product designed by and for men, that these would be our only two sizes, regular and extra large. So we sent our correspondent out to a number of drugstores to ask the pharmacist if they had any small size condoms. And I remember very clearly the conversation I had with the executive vice president of NBC. And he said, Mike, you cannot run this piece. We will lose affiliates in the South. What does that mean? And he said, you cannot conjure up the image of a small penis for 7 minutes on national television and expect people in the South to watch this. And I said, well, the BBC is going to air it. Well, he goes, exactly my point, you know. I'm going, these are the kind of conversations you have in network television. It's just an insane thing. I don't get it. Well, in closing, they'll never run this part on C-SPAN, will they? They're back there now, Marshall, they go, can you say condom on C-SPAN? No, you can say penis, you can't say condom. I think that's it. In closing, I personally want to thank the people here who operate bookstores, and especially the independent bookstores in this country. The last few weeks, this is city 13 of my 47-city tour. Yes, it's bigger than KISS. This started as a 10-city tour, and because of the response to the book, has grown into a 47-city tour, and it's been incredible. Going to places like Allentown, Pennsylvania, and having 1,000 people show up, 2,000 people in Michigan at the book signings. It's just been extraordinary to see this outpouring of people that come out and who want to tell me their stories about what's happened to them and what's been going on. And you know, when I did this deal with Random House to do this book, and they said, well, you know, we like this a lot and we're really behind you, but, you know, don't expect Rush Limbaugh numbers. You know, in fact, we probably won't do 1/100th of what Rush Limbaugh does, because that's just where the country's at. And I said, you know, I think you're wrong. I really think that this represents where the majority of the country is at. I think that people have had it, and I think that they really, most Americans have a very good heart and want to live in a better place and do not respond to the Republicans and the right wing with their agenda of hatred and fear and blaming the immigrants and everything else that they're up to. I don't think people are at that place. And in fact, you remember in '94 after the Republican victory, the landslide, remember that, the mandate? You know, when only 38% of the people are voting, and your side gets the majority of that, which equals about 20%. 20% of the voting age American public voted for Gingrich and the Republicans. That's all. Didn't McGovern get somewhere in the 40%? He was considered a huge loser. Gingrich and these guys get 20%. It's considered a mandate? It's not a mandate, it's a cult. It's a cult. We don't need to be frightened by this. I really think that this is where the majority of people are at. And I have seen this now firsthand in going to these cities and in the response to the book. They just told me today at Random House that on Monday the book will enter the bestseller list for Publishers Weekly. And tomorrow on the San Francisco Chronicle list, it jumps from number 12 to number 3. And last Tuesday they ordered the second printing of the book, and on Friday they ordered the third printing. And so it's very encouraging to me to see this kind of response, and to have people like the woman who stopped me in the Denver airport here today telling me about how her husband has been transferred and laid off and fired 3 different times in the last 3 years. You know, we all know that this is the America in which we live. People have seen their American dream go up in smoke. People working longer hours for less pay, less benefits, no sense of job security. And that's just the bookstore owners. Well, you know what I mean, right? We all know that this is where we live. And we want it better. We want it better for our kids. Because it used to be that if you worked hard and the company prospered, you prospered. And now it's you work hard, the company prospers, and you lose your job. That's not the America any of us want to live in. And I would encourage all of you to do what you can to speak to your friends and your neighbors, the people who come into your stores, and to ask them to please not give up. Don't check out. Don't check out. If we do that, they will be running the show. We have to stay involved. We have to realize there are no mandates from the right wing here, that we are the majority. There are more of us than there are of them. And we need to get out there and turn this country around. Thank you very, very much for being here tonight. Thank you.
I don't know about y'all, I'm badly in need of a drink here. I want to thank everyone for coming. You know, the proceeds from this evening all go to our Literacy Grant Fund. And the wonderful authors who were such good sports through all of this. They will stay up here at the dais for about another half hour if you want to come up and visit, or if you brought a book from your personal library that you might like to have signed. And thank you and good night.